Alright, thank you for checking this one out. This time to my guide to the Inquisitor class in Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. In this one, I will again, just like in my Court Poet video, present kind of like the most complex version of the build, I would say. And you can maybe, hopefully, if you want to learn a bit about it more, and understand why I did what I did, and you can always simplify this type of version of the build to something more straightforward for you depending on the difficulty you're playing, just because I was trying to squeeze out the most I can get out of the character, and generally you don't have to like do this nonsense that much. You can go more pure or take only a few dips if you want. But anyways, let's get into it. This Inquisitor is a judge, which is actually probably the most difficult type of Inquisitor to build, just because they have a lot of little swift actions they want to do while attacking also. They are much more mad, and for your Inquisitor playthrough, I would recommend that you actually take something much more simpler, offensively focused, like Sanctified Slayer base, Sacred Huntsmaster base, or a Faith Hunter Inquisitor rather than a Judge, because in the end, while the Judgments are nice and provide little boosts, this is it's still more finicky, I find, than what it's worth. And what you end up is like kind of a flying paladin that is not a paladin light kind of version, just because their judgments are weaker than the very OP smite that you get on the paladins. But anyways, the final build, as you see here, is 10 Inquisitor, in this case being a judge, 5 Mutation Warrior, 2 Sable Company Marine, 1 Aldori Swordlord, 1 Lore Master, and 1 Sohei. This looks like Camellia, but it's not Camellia. Again, like just in the Nino video, this is Merc, 20 point by Merc, that I respect to this. And you can run this type of build as a main as well. It should be quite fun with the Trickster or Aeon Mythic Pass. It would work with anything. I would say like the weakest pass for it would be either Azata or Demon. But actually everything will work for this, because actually Inquisitor is very versatile as a class. It's a nice glue for the team overall, and I really love running them in my teams. The interesting thing about the Inquisitor class, everything except the Living Grimoire gets Cunning Initiative, which is means they stack their initiative both with wisdom and dexterity. So they often go first, and you kind of want to capitalize on those strengths. And that's why we're going for a dexterity-based build on the Inquisitors and not a strength-based build. As a dexterity-based build, to have them do good damage, there's quite a bit involved. And in the end, what it boils down to for me is that in terms of the weapons you can actually use to maximize your feat efficiency to do damage with dex is only the Dueling Sword. In this case, this endgame Master Fencer's sword. You can go for Elven Curved Blades as well, but those involve even more mythic feats and feats in general, and you will be already quite feat starved with what you're doing. So that only leaves the Dueling Sword as your weapon of choice, with a 1 level dip in Aldori Swordlord to convert all your dex to damage basically by using it. So in terms of the character, what's important is we start as a Sable Company Marine. You do want the Griffin pet. It just offers the most mobility. What you can do is when you do a swift action yourself, you can actually then charge with the Griffin and still get a full attack off. And that is why I think, particularly for the judges, this griffin is kind of the best pet you can get, and you should start as a Sable Company Marine going into Inquisitor if you want to do this. The other interesting quirk right now in the game, since these new domains were introduced of Dahak and Apsu, is they do have Scaly Kind domain. And Scaly Kind domain gives you an animal progression just like the animal domain, and they stack with each other, which means you can do some pretty I don't know if that'll stay in the game, but currently you can stack those two domains and take non-pet classes and progress them, and I'm taking advantage of that in this build with a 5 mutation warrior, 1 Sohei split. If this ever gets fixed or changed to work more, that you only get animal progression from one domain again, your choice is left that you have to reduce this build anyways down to just 6 Sohei instead of 5 mutation warrior, 1 Sohei. And also, ideally, instead of judge, you can still run it as a judge or any inquisitor, but like Sacred Huntsmaster would be the kind of safest way to run it again. But in terms of how you make this build, again, it's as much dexterity as possible, 19 dex, 18 wisdom, and the rest, whatever is left, basically. So dexterity, wisdom, and then you always raise dexterity on level ups. Wisdom is nice for your domains and abilities, but it's more of a kind of a neat byproduct. You should still concentrate on your main offensive stat always, which is dexterity. The way to make this work is, yes, you still take weapon finesse at 1. Here she's just like Camellia, a half elf, which is fine. It just, then you have to take either knowledge world or arcana to qualify for lore master later, but it doesn't really, you can start it as a human and juggle some feats around as well. What is important is the Aldori Swordsman background, because it gives you native proficiency with Dueling Swords, and this is actually very important. You should start your character with this background. And then in terms of your deity, it can be one of these new 2 deities, Dahak, Apsu, I think, and they will give you Scaly Kind domain access, which is the domain you will take. You will take the Scaly Kind domain here as your Inquisitor choice. And then on first level, of course, you still start as a Sable Company Marine. Since this is pretty complex, you can check the description again for more details. After you take 1 level of Sable Company Marine, you go basically for 8 levels straight into Inquisitor until you can get access to level 8 Inquisitor and Guarded Hearth, but not for your party. But then you just go into Boon Companion, into Weapon Focus, Dueling Swords. Here, this is improved initiative, and here it's spell penetration. Aldori Dueling Swordlord does require some skill points, specific skill points to unlock, so make sure you're progressing those, because you do want to take a dip in this class sooner rather than later, so you can actually start scaling your Dueling Swords off of Dex. And I would say that is also important to do like in the first 8 to 9 levels as you're progressing the build. Then we just take spell penetration, improved critical when we get it. And around the time that you have access to level 3 spells, the very important Litany of Eloquence, which is the OP spell you get for your Inquisitors, which basically stun locks and disables any tough enemies. You kind of can ease out of this because you'll be a level 8 Inquisitor and have access to something like Guarded Hearth by then. And then you can take a second level in Sable Company Marine to get power attack without the qualifying strength for it. That is good because Of course, it'll scale your damage because you can two-hand the Dueling Swords like an Elven Curved Blade or a Scimitar or a big weapon, but it's an agile weapon and it scales off of dex. In terms of Judge, why did I stop at 10? The thing is, Inquisitors are a good class, but I feel they are more front-loaded than anything else. Yes, your domains kind of scale on and on as you go deeper into the class, and your judgments as well. But I find it's more and more like diminishing returns, and you can do better after around 10 to 12 levels of Inquisitor and start getting more good stuff from either like Mutation Warrior or just straight up Sohei to 6. And what that'll give you is, of course, a bonus feats that you need, weapon specialization in the case of the Mutation Warrior, or on Sohei you would get an extra attack. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The only thing, as I said, is that in generally a judge will still struggle to juggle a lot of actions at once. Though being on the Hippogryph mount does help a lot with it. So it's probably better just to run it as a Sanctified Slayer or a Faith Hunter or a Sacred Huntsmaster than a judge. Because in terms of mythics, again, you do want community as soon as possible. And then if you're like one of these Inquisitors, like a judge that has judgments, of course you need everlasting judgment. If you didn't have those, and they're honestly more finicky than they're worth it, you can immediately go for something like Last Stand or Improved Initiative here, or even Mythic Spell Penetration to make sure your Litany of Eloquence always lands. Then you do need to get Animal Domain, Impossible Domain Animal around Mythic level 3, just because around this time you'll start taking possibly classes that do not scale your pet anymore, and you want this trick with Scalekind and Animal to keep the pet scaling. Then of course improved critical for Dueling Sword is always good here as 4. Mythic Charger, because that's you are going to be scaling your charge attack on this build, power attack. Inspirational Leader, just because I think it fits nicely on the build, because you don't have like slots on these type of abilities for improved initiative mythic, but you can grab Inspirational Leader that scales almost as well as the improved initiative mythic. Although you can take something like Abundant Casting here as well, in case someone else in your group has this ability. Mythic Light for Light Armor Focus Assault, because you will be wearing light armor and using this Finesse Dueling Sword to scale attack with it. Something like Snakeskin is also always like the best endgame thing for that. What is left is just something like Ever Ready or Last Stand and a weapon specialization Mythic Dueling Sword, and that's pretty much the build, yeah. Thank you for watching this one again, and as I said at the beginning, you can always kind of take some hints from this video and simplify the build to be more streamlined for you, in case you don't want all these complex dips to get everything and play it more simpler as like a 12, say like a 12 Inquisitor, 6 Sohei, and then you have a few levels left to do something. But I would say, of course, Aldori Swordlord is very important for this build to get dex to damage, and lastly, Sable Company Marine to give you that very mobile pet, so you can still do swift actions and then charge with the pet and get the full attacks off.